So, the shape of the universe is a toroidal hypersphere. And the way I know this is because things on the inside of it are solid and contain electrons, and the things on the outside of it are formless, as in disembodied, yet adhere to patterns. And so the way you can tell that they're both the same thing is the adherence to the pattern. Every electron in this physical world is the same. Exactly the same. And the thing is, the other side of it functions with energies that do not abide to the illusion of permanence. I mean, okay, so they can, but they don't have to. And just imagine like a big bottle, but we're on the inside and we're slowly drifting towards the outside. Really, what we're doing is drifting from 4-dimensional existence to 5-dimensional existence. And all this means is that the structures that we will encounter as we progress function on geometries that are not the same as the ones down here. As in the world of change, where nothing is eternal, why would the laws of physics be eternal? And they're not. They're this way on this side of things, and they're that way on the other side. And chi is the life force that is basically connecting all things. It's like a big comet that orbits from the center of the hypersphere around the outside of it and back through the center over and over again, constantly moving. And people have visions of things from the other side, and there are ways to look into it, even as a human being whose body is comprised of electrons. I mean, my personal spin is that the whole universe is basically unfolding inside out, like a crumpled up shirt when you go to uncrumple it. And we started in the center of, it's called a Klein bottle. Well, it's called a hypersphere, but it's a lot like a Klein bottle. And at that center, all things are uniform. There's a state of energy where all that is one, a singularity. And it might have been observed, and we know that the law of observation states when you measure something, it changes. So, to explain hyperdimensional colors and visions, we say that after enough development based on observation, enough change will happen that even things we thought were fundamental will change. So, maybe humans will be able to fly. Maybe you'll just download information instantaneously without having to think about it. But on this side of the toroid, what we call reality, and on the other side, what we call hyperspace. Now, I don't like this paradigm because they're two arbitrary points on a circle. As in, the only thing relevant about them that we know is the distance between them. Because any point on a circle gives you really no information about the circle. You have to have an arc. So, what many people classically consider to be reality is actually just a dot on a circle. And other dots on this circle have different properties because the circle changes as it's drawn. And eventually it becomes so unrecognizable that it turns into a sphere. So, the early stages of the universe happened almost instantaneously according to the standard model. But somewhere along this 14 billion year process, we entered a paradigm of 4 dimensions. The number 4 and the amount of dimensions is not significant. That's not how many dimensions exist in reality. This is how many dimensions are available to us within our lifetimes of studying what we can even perceive. So it's classically accepted that 4 dimensions exist: left, right, forward, backward, up, down, and time. But what happens when the classical world is experienced by somebody in a way that defies those dimensionalities? Things just appearing and then disappearing without following a observable trajectory. Hallucinations that come in and out of witnessability. And my explanation is that non-Euclidean geometry exists, but somewhere on the circle where the human life is not easily accessing it. You have to take psychedelics or have a fucking stress breakdown or meditate for hours at a time, and do controlled breathing. But, and this is what top psychedelic researchers say, when you have enough energy in your brain, there's enough cross communication between certain parts of it to sort of access esoteric experiences. And they're only classified that way because they violate the assumptions of everyday life and experience. When you see a face come out of the wall, or when you see disembodied colors or UFOs or shapes or whatever it is, the Jungians subscribe to the idea that this is all collective unconscious human beings' ideas adding up to create a zeitgeist that somehow contain, and that's really what they leave it at. There's no real explanatory power in Carl Jung's application of psychology to the psychedelic experience. And I'm someone who subscribes to the idea that if you don't want to participate in the hive mind, you don't have to. It's hard to get away from all influence, but at the same time, you have your own mind, you make your own choices. So when it comes to archetypes, jesters, angels, demons, elf machines, the reason that people have the similar experience is not because the brain is similar from individual to individual and the imagination is similar, and the things in that person's life that led them to where they were are all similar enough that they're seeing the same thing. The reason they're seeing the same thing is because that thing is actually there. And we will die, probably, everyone seeing this video, sooner than human beings will mutate to transition into 5-dimensional. It's all on a big clock. And so by the time the Earth makes it there, we will be long gone. But our ability to pick up on things that happen there is getting stronger as a species. Simultaneously, the politics and government are getting much worse. And so on one hand, we're going up, up, up. And on the other hand, we're going straight towards the edge of destruction, with the global politics being the way they are. So people are going to start having more abduction experiences, more divine intervention experiences, and more spiritual, mystical experiences, because the universe is turning itself inside out. It's taking the things that were in the center of this toroid, which is what it is. So it's really just changing its shape. It's like, the walls are rotating and pushing us outward. So my thing is, what's the point? I used to be so happy and excited by 5-dimensional things, and I'm sure that will happen to me again, but what's the point? Because if that life is the same as this life, just functioning on principles that are different, why care? Why bother that there are giant machine elves? I don't have a physical body over there, so it's like, what's the allure? What's the allure? And, well, I don't know. But if there is a God, maybe his presence and language is more accessible and observable on that side of the toroid, because right now it's where we go when we die. We go just past the line of physical embodiment with electrons, and all of a sudden ideas are the new paradigm. I can't claim to know how that works, but I'm sure it's similar to having a deep psychedelic experience. In fact, I've had psychedelic experiences where I thought I was dead. And I think the importance is having the validation of the experience while you're alive. When someone has those kinds of experiences here in 4D reality, they need to be seen as legitimate, and they can be analyzed and studied, and you can learn from them. Casting it off as imaginary is anti-science and is just retrograding the paradigm and bringing it back to a regressed form of only believing in what you know to be true. So a lot of times people have validations of their psychedelic experiences when they come down. I've had this, other people have had this, you know, wow, what just happened? And then you look over and there's a praying mantis on the table. Well, I just saw praying mantis God in the bug universe where everyone's made out of after images and like things like randomly assemble, self-assemble, and turn into living creatures. Yeah. And so there is a God. There is a God. It's just a matter of seeing God in a river of mud, and your body is made out of mud. You're covered in mud. You've got mud inside of your body and out, but your soul is like a little piece of God. And so there is an ability to discern that you're in this river of mud as a mud creature. And this is how people know they're alive. How can you, someone who was created by the stars and the universe and the planets smashing into each other, randomly lining up to create amino acids that somehow formed into proteins that somehow blah, 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 over millions and millions of years, how would something inside of the system figure out that it's inside of the system? It wouldn't. It can't. It's a basic law of, you know, understanding is that if you're embedded in something, the only way you know is if you have a connection to the outside of it. And that right